Hello, Marla with Lifestyle by Marla.
And Sanjo Joe with also Lifestyle by Marla and website Renegade.
Yeah, and little Dio.
Yay, my boy,
yay.
finally.
Oh. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about night terrors. I look a little rough today.
Night terrors.
No, I did not. It's been a busy morning.
It's been a busy morning. It's been a busy week. Had my father in, or my dad in from Nevada, along with my grandma, my kid's great grandma.
Yeah.
They came to visit, and we were cleaning all the way up until that point. We're also running our businesses, and there was
It was
a
busy.
lot.
There was a lot.
That week was
Sundays
filled.
are always full, full day, but it was good. It was a good weekend, but I'm looking a little rough, and that's okay. It's Monday.
You went to the gym though. It's all right.
I
You're
did.
allowed to look
I
back.
did good. Yes, looking rough. So we wanted to talk about night terrors because we know that with PTSD, the night terrors come as well, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. I think it's embarrassing. I think for the guys to talk about it, and like Sanju and I were just discussing, he doesn't even remember the night terror that like changed my whole outlook on his situation. So we wanted to hit up on that, and he wanted to talk about some, his experience with night terrors and
Like the stuff that I remember. So, well, people try to want to understand what night terrors are, and that's simply it's just a nightmare. But it's more than just a nightmare. It's living inside of a dream but thinking it's reality. That's a night terror.
right.
Okay, a smaller, not a less important part of that, but another example that could help bring you to that. The concept of that is those who are sleepwalking. Mm-hmm. Some people sleepwalk, make food, get dressed,
And they don't even
car,
know.
and they have no idea that it even happened.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with night terrors, except night terrors is what it sounds like. It's a terror, reliving a traumatic event and a stressful environment that it came from. Like
right.
all parts of it, kicking into high gear as if you were there and are there, and at least the one who's dealing with it is there.
Right.
So, they say don't wake a person who's sleepwalking. Well, it's the same thing with night terrors.
Yeah.
You touch them, then you might become part of the casualty.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the one thing that changed my outlook, I've told you, I didn't really believe that he had PTSD. It wasn't really something that I'm going to move y'all for a minute. It wasn't really something that I had imagined that he had, or I thought he was kind of making it up, to be honest.
Thanks.
And so, but this one particular night changed my whole outlook on that. And that was one night we both went to bed. He always went to bed super late. When he came home from Afghanistan, he was always going to bed like 3 hours after I would go to bed. So he went to bed and I was sleeping, and he woke up talking. And I was like, who is he talking to? And mind you, he does not remember this at all. This is one of the nights that he does not remember. So he wakes up talking, and I'm like, who's he talking to? And he's getting out of bed and he's getting dressed. And he's like in a rush, in a big hurry. And he's telling names that I haven't ever met before. Like he's saying, different names of his platoon, I'm guessing, or his squad. Yeah. So he's telling these guys who are not in the room, who are not there, to get down low, and giving them orders. And then he includes me. He gets me out of bed, and he's wanting me to crawl low, and he's wanting me to do this. And all of this is like, whoa, like what is happening? And I'm like half asleep, but it's scaring me because I'm like, okay, at first I was like, oh, that's a funny joke, Sanjo. Like, okay, couldn't sleep. You want to play military right now? Okay.
Play military. I was still in.
I was like,
this is my life.
I'll play your game, whatever. And then, but as it went on for 5 hours. 5 hours that night. And so you better believe when morning came and his psychiatrist, the office opened up, I was on the phone with her. I call her Minnie. I was on the phone with that lady because I was like, we have got to get an appointment today. We eventually went to sleep for a couple more hours. He finally went to sleep and I was trying to get him, like, okay, let's go to sleep. And he was not having it at all. He was clearing the house. He was doing crazy things, So when I woke up, called Minnie, and Minnie said, let's get him in right now. So I had a separate meeting with Minnie. He was in the waiting room and he was wondering, why does she even want to go to my appointment with me? Like, why does she even want to be here? He was super mad. He was super irritated because...
I was happy. I was really happy and excited that you was taking interest in my life.
No, he was not. No, he was irritated and he was really... I was irritated because he was irritated. And I was just like, what is happening? So finally we talked to Minnie and she was like, listen... when he gets in those stages, you play along. And so I told her, I played along. I was like dead tired. I was like confused half of the time. Like, why is this happening? And she said it's a night terror. And a lot of times those things happen. Those things happen when a change happens in the weather. That could trigger something. When something is said, or when a flashback happens. Maybe a flashback happened in his dream and he was there. So that was a huge thing. And so up until that point, I was like, you're totally faking it, Sanjo. You are totally faking it. And it was something that was really in my face, like, no, this is a problem and we have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that really scared her at first. Because, like she said, I don't remember that. Even afterwards, she said, Marla told me that she had a conversation with me about it. And then we called, my psychologist, which I had an appointment with. So to me, it all blurs into one because I saw her every week, So, but it's really important, and you heard from her perspective, the spouses, that it's hard to believe, like we talked about before, like you don't want to believe that your man is in that condition or your spouse or significant others in that condition. Like Marla still had doubts until that moment.
Right. Yeah.
But here's the thing too. I was still discovering that I didn't even know I was having those things. Mm-hmm. There was but as time went on, I started when I had night terrors. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, completely drenched. Mm-hmm. Right. I had no idea how. No idea why. I kept getting asked, "Are you getting a good sleep?" I'm like, "Oh yeah," but really, I was only getting like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of actual sleep a night. But I'd be in bed for 10 hours. And usually those that came in at a later time, so I kept going to sleep later and later and later. And my psychologist said, that's because you're avoiding dealing with the emotions. You're avoiding dealing with the events that took place. They got several different types of techniques out there, but there's one that's called like a deep progression or deep submersion or something like that, where they try to make you close your eyes and then ask you about the environment. Right. And tell you what's going on. So they kind of try to force you back in there. It's not like a hypnosis, but I feel like that's the closest thing I could say. They work you back into that place in that moment, so that way you could work where the trauma was the most effective, right? And then try to guide you back out. So relive the trauma, walk you back out of it. Right. And one of the things I went through, and I remember this one, is because I had a night terror. I didn't know it was a terror. I had two different ones, and I have a layout of my house in my head, right? So I was at home just chilling, relaxing. In my dream, I was at home chilling, having whatever, and suddenly I opened the front door, Afghanistan. Yeah. Immediately. What was weird about it is because I'm a highly suspicious person to begin with, so in my dream, I stood at the door, and I looked out and see nothing but desert. I see the exact environment, the smell, the play, everything that I had dealt with before. And I look behind me, and there's my family inside the living room chilling. Right? And then suddenly I'm getting over the radio a mission, And here I am, I'm like, oh, cool, we're going to go head over to Bravo, one of the places, that we named. We're going to head over to Bravo, or actually at the time we called it Burger King. But One Tree Hill, just site identification. But anyways, I got into this vehicle in our Humvee, but the Humvee turned into a freaking bus. I mean, like a yellow school bus. And me and my guys were fighting, we're shooting out the windows. I don't know if I had watched the movie beforehand or whatever was going on, but I was creating like both from the real, from back here in the States, and I was in Afghanistan. And here I am living these two things, but incorporating them in there, right, freaking me out. And here I'm back in the mode. Boom, immediately I'm giving orders, giving instruction. And lo and behold.
Was that you sleeping, or was that?
That was me sleeping.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, my brother-in-law is driving this bus in this combat environment. And I look, I'm like, Mitchell, get your butt together. I was just like yelling at him, and then it clicked on me. He's not even supposed to be here. Right. But here we are getting shot at. We're ducking, but explosions are happening around us. And it was just like, and it was just one of those weird things. It was like, I woke up, cold sweat, didn't know what was happening, because my mind was just still trying to work through things, right? And I think the other one I had was, I opened the door, again, Afghanistan. I was fighting a Haji in my house. The alarm went off. I went through, and the door was open. Afghanistan, desert, right? Inside, I'm clearing my house, because I don't leave the door open. The alarm's going off. So I'm clearing the whole house, and this guy comes out of nowhere, and we are struggling and fighting. Eventually stabs me in the chest in my dream, stabs me in the chest, and I wake up screaming. I sit up out of bed, yelling at the top of my lungs, right? So that's the reality of it all. And, I don't know, I've had friends who fought their wives, pinned them down, had them scared to death. And I think I even went through a couple of those myself. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Mara would know.
There was a time, he's biting me. There was a time where he was clearing the house, and he had a knife. And he didn't realize I was in the kitchen in North Carolina. He didn't realize I was in the kitchen. And so he comes around the corner, how they clear, they're super quick about it, okay? I couldn't even do it if I tried, okay? But they go around the corner, and they clear. I can't even explain it well. But he was clearing the house. I was in the kitchen. He had a knife, and he didn't realize that it was me, and he was coming after me. I was like, it's me, and it finally, thank God, something clicked, and he was like, oh my God,
it's
what
free.
Just happened? So at that point, I went back to Miss Minnie. And her and we had some come to Jesus moments, because I was like, this is what's happening in our house. And I had to be very real with her. I had to be very honest with her. I'm scared in my own house. I'm scared when he goes to sleep. I don't know what's going to happen. And we have kids, So she was like, hide the knives. At night, hide the car keys. Because he was trying to drive. One night, he was in one of his night terrors and totally asleep. But he wanted to drive. And so I was fighting him about driving. I couldn't just let him go. So that ended up, because I eventually woke him up in that moment. And then that turned out bad, because you're not supposed to wake them up. I was at a loss. So if anybody's out there who's struggling with a spouse that has night terrors, trust me. Okay, trust me when I say I know what you're going through, and it is the hardest thing to get help with. It's the hardest thing to overcome. But as long as you're communicating, hey, did you realize you did this last night? Hey, did you realize? I didn't do that. I just went straight to Minnie. So, which she had some tips and things, and talk to somebody who is a professional in this. Dio, no.
What the beauty about Minnie is that she was also prior service too, so she was able to communicate from a place of military structure. Most of the caretakers I've had, he's having an argument with his mom. Most of the caretakers and psychologists I've had, and I've had quite a bit of them, I couldn't connect with them. I felt like I could talk around them in circles. They had nothing but the book knowledge to me. All right, and they weren't really helping me, because they had no clue.
Right.
But the people that actually were in the service had experience. I had like 2 of them, no, 3. I'm sorry, 3 of them.
Tap the table.
They worked brilliantly. They called me out on my BS. They asked me, like, they didn't judge me, and that was the biggest thing right there. When you go to talk to these people and you tell them the real truth about how you're really feeling,
Right.
those feelings and what we say are very scary to these people who think that, we need to put you in a white coat and a love me jacket because you're not allowed to be around and walking in public. And immediately from there, we don't tell you anything.
Right.
We will tell you what you want to hear because it's our session. We have to be here. Yeah.
That's your biggest fear.
Because I'm not being heard at that moment. I'm being shuffled off into a mental ward. I don't need that. But I go to my buddies and be like, yo, man, I'm ready to blow this place up. I am so taken. Like, dude, I get it. I get it. You want me to help you? You want me to help you? I'll set the charges, I would do it together. We'll clear this entire place because it's driving me crazy. But you get to vent it out. You don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You just vent it out. Some guys are scary about how they help you because we all think it through and we all think of angles and points of entry, danger zones, and all that stuff. So, and that's what we're trained to do. So naturally, it's gonna be okay. So it's always best to have someone who had that experience guiding you through that experience.
Right. So don't be, don't do this alone. Find help. Find the right kind of help. Find your tribe. That I had, Minnie that I talked to, she was military. I've never been military. I was just military wife, So I didn't know the steps that I needed to take, and I didn't know what exactly I needed to do to help him recover and keep our family safe at that same time, So don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. There is hope for you. There's still nights where it's not as bad. Thank the Lord it's not as bad, but he still sweats straight through the sheets. Like he is just sopping wet sometimes. There's still nights where he wakes up in a panic. I go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning and I put my hand on him, just letting him know, hey, I'm leaving. When I put out my hand on him
in the past,
sometimes just last week, he's sleeping and he was like he freaked out. His eyes get like this big, and I'm like, okay, do I step away? Do I run to the door? But he's got my wrist, so his eyes are big, and he's got my wrist. I'm like, okay, let me go. I don't know what's gonna happen because I've got PTSD from him. His night terrors. So there's that. There's
Remember the time when you had to use a stick to wake me up?
Yep, I poked him from afar away. It was like poking a bear.
We can laugh about it now.
It was like poking a bear. Beep beep beep. Okay, and then you run a little bit farther away from the bed.
So guys, remember. So all of you are experiencing some form of it: law enforcement, military. You don't have to be in combat to experience these kind of PTSDs. It just has to be a stressful environment. Remember that. That's what PTSD is: reliving the extremely stressful environment. Yeah. All right. And it's humbling to hear this it's very humbling to hear this from my spouse because I never felt right about putting her in danger because my whole purpose was to protect her, not cause her harm.
Right.
So remember, it's humbling, but it needs to be heard. You need to hear it. So you're aware, maybe in somewhere in the back of your mind, it clicks that, okay, I need to actually take the steps I need to go get help, get better, and do it for my family, do it for myself. So that way you don't feel like you're creating she's scared to be in your own home. Yeah. That's where a lot of separation leaves and people will get frustrated. They don't communicate. And the bottom line is have a word, talk. Right. So keep up the good work, and make sure, again,
don't give up, guys.
Don't give up. Mm-hmm. But if you have any questions, any comments, go ahead, put it down in the comment below. Yeah. We're going to create an email where you could actually email your conversation and stuff in. We'll start adding that too later. Mm-hmm. But for the time being, share the word. Share the word with other people because it might help them. You don't know. Yeah. It might help you and you don't know. Right. So
next week we're going to be talking about how the events that created the PTSD, how that has affected our holidays and our things that we go through, birthdays, holidays. It has affected everything.
Eating at restaurants.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. So we're going to hit on that next week, and I can't wait for you to join us.
Hey, take care.